Mark woke up to a strange sound outside his tent. At first he thought it was just wind brushing against the fabric, but then came a soft metallic clinking, slow and steady. He sat up quickly, heart beating fast. This planet wasn't safe. He knew that from the moment he crash-landed weeks ago. He grabbed his knife and slowly unzipped the tent flap, and then he froze. There, in the early morning light, sat a creature, no, a woman, an alien half covered in furs and strange leathers. She had wild, thick hair, animal-like ears, and glowing yellow eyes that locked onto his. She wasn't just sitting, she was chained. Chains wrapped around her, wrists, ankles, and neck, and the chain links were tied directly to the corner post of his tent. Mark stepped out slowly, blade in hand, unsure what he was seeing. The woman didn't move, didn't attack. She sat with her knees pulled up, arms wrapped around them, eyes never blinking. "What are you doing?" he asked quietly. Her voice came low and rough as if unused for years. "Chained myself," she said, "to you." Mark's stomach tightened. "To me?" he asked, confused and cautious. She nodded once. "You are calm, human." She whispered, "You keep the beast quiet." Her body was tall, strong, and covered in old scars, but there was something broken in her voice, something soft beneath the muscle. She didn't growl or hiss, but her presence still felt like danger. He circled her slowly, watching the chains. They weren't locked from the outside. She had chained herself. "What's your name?" Mark asked. "Karila," she whispered. "And why are you here?" She didn't answer at first, just looked down at her shackled hands. Finally, she said, "I was made for war, for killing, but they made a mistake." "What mistake?" "I need a bond," she said. "A lifeline to stay calm." Mark frowned, still not understanding. He had heard rumors about genetically modified alien soldiers, experiments gone wrong. Was she one of them? Was she dangerous? "You should go," he said carefully. "This place isn't safe." She shook her head fast, eyes wide with panic. "No," she said, voice sharp now. "If I leave, the beast wakes." Mark raised his hands. Okay, calm down." Karila closed her eyes and breathed deep, trying to obey. Mark looked at the chain again, thick, heavy, and clearly old. "Where did you get these?" he asked. "Use them on me," she replied. "Now I use them on myself." She wasn't bleeding, not wounded, but she looked exhausted, not just in body, but in soul. "You ran away from someone?" "Yes," she said. "They wanted to erase my mind, use me again." Mark stepped back, unsure if he should run or help. But she didn't move, didn't beg, didn't cry. She just sat, silent, waiting for him to decide. The sun rose a little higher, revealing more of her face. Beneath the dirt and wild hair, she was younger than he thought. Maybe his age, maybe younger. Her sharp teeth were visible when she breathed, but her lips trembled like someone scared. "I won't hurt you," she whispered. "Not if you stay." Mark sighed, rubbing his forehead. "This is crazy," he muttered. But something in her eyes made him pause. Not the wild glow, but the fear behind it. She had chained herself not to trap him, but to keep herself from running wild. "I'm not your keeper," he said. Karila nodded slowly. "I know," she whispered. "But you're my anchor now." Mark didn't know what to say. All he knew was that this alien woman, this Beastwoman, had chosen him, not to attack, not to kill, but to stay sane, and that scared him more than anything else. He looked at the horizon, then at her again. He could hear her chain rattle softly as she adjusted her position. She was already falling asleep, still chained to his tent, and in that moment, Mark realized he wasn't alone anymore, but he also wasn't sure if that was a good thing. The next morning, Mark found Karila still chained to his tent post, but something had changed. She was awake now, sitting straighter, watching him with tired but alert eyes. Her muscles twitched under her skin like something inside was pulling to break free. Mark approached slowly, a cup of heated water in hand. "Here," he said. "You need it." She sniffed it first like an animal, then sipped it with both hands shaking. "You didn't run," she said, voice rough but calm. "You didn't attack," he replied. "So I stayed." She lowered the cup, steam rising into her face. "My body is dangerous," she whispered. "They made it that way, strong, fast, without mercy. But my mind, it's still mine when someone anchors it." Mark sat on a rock a few feet away, watching her carefully. "So you mean I calm you?" She nodded. "Your voice, your scent, your heartbeat. That's weird," Mark muttered. "It saved your life last night," she said sharply. "Twice," Mark blinked. "What do you mean?" She raised her arm, revealing deep scratches on her upper arm. "Self-inflicted." "I almost turned," she said, "but I chained myself before it happened. Your presence. It kept me on the edge, not over it." Mark felt a chill go down his spine. So she was truly that dangerous, and she had held it back for him. "Why me?" he asked softly. "Why not someone else?" Karila looked away, ashamed. "I don't choose with my mind," she said. "My instincts do." The day passed slowly, with Karila helping around camp. She carried supplies, built a stronger fire pit, and even fixed the tent flap. Mark noticed she never left the length of her chain, not once, even when she had the chance. He found her at dusk, kneeling by the water purifier, humming softly. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. "From a human prisoner," she said quietly. He sang to stay calm. "What happened to him?" "They used him to test my rage," she said, her voice cracking. Mark said nothing, but his hands clenched into fists. No one should live like that. Not human, not alien. Later that night, Karila sat by the fire while Mark checked his gear. She looked up suddenly, eyes sharp. "Something's coming," she whispered. Mark stood quickly, grabbing his scanner. It beeped faintly, small movement at the edge of the cliffs. He saw it first, 2 scavenger drones scanning for heat signatures. "Stay down," he said, but Karila didn't. "Move," she growled low in her throat. Mark turned to her. "You have to stay calm." Her hands trembled, her chains rattled, and her breathing turned shallow. "They smell like them," she hissed. "My makers." Mark knelt in front of her, placing both hands on her shoulders. "Hey, look at me, just look at me," he said firmly, her glowing eyes locked onto his, wide with panic. "You're not there anymore," he whispered. "You're here, with me." Karila breathed hard, sweat running down her neck. Then slowly the growl faded. The drones moved on, unaware of the tension just below the hill. She collapsed into him, breathing fast, her body shivering like a storm just passed. "You did it," Mark whispered. "You fought it back." "I almost failed," she whispered. "I almost hurt you." He didn't move, didn't let go. "You didn't," he said. "And that matters." After a while, she sat up, wiping her face. "Most would have put a bullet in me," she said softly. "Even before I changed." Mark stared into the fire. "I'm not most." She looked at him for a long time, eyes full of something new. Something like trust. Then she asked the question that truly shook him. "If I lose control, will you end me?" Mark stayed silent for a moment, then stood. "No," he said simply. "I'll remind you who you are." Karila didn't reply, just looked down at her chains. Mark walked to his tent, heart heavy. He didn't know how long he could do this, but one thing was clear. She was trying, and for someone created for war, trying meant everything. That night, as the stars turned above them, Karila didn't growl, didn't tremble. She simply whispered one word into the cold night air: "Thank you." 3 days passed, and Mark began to feel like he was living with a loaded weapon that refused to fire. Karila no longer growled in her sleep, and her breathing at night became calm. But something about her still felt coiled, like a storm. Held back by rope, she was still chained, though now by choice, not fear. And every day she asked the same quiet question. Am I safe today? Mark never gave her a clear answer. He didn't know the truth himself. That morning, he climbed the ridge above camp with his old scanner in hand. The sky was clear, blue with faint violet lines. A rare, peaceful day. But peace didn't last. On this planet, he scanned the horizon and froze. Multiple blips were moving in formation, fast and low to the ground. They weren't wildlife and they weren't friendly. They were trackers. He slid down the ridge and reached Karila, who was sharpening a broken spear. We need to move, Mark said out of breath. She looked up fast, her ears twitching. Is it them? I don't know who them is, he said. But they're coming fast and they're looking for something. Karila stood, her chains clinking softly. I know that sound, she whispered. Electric bikes with silent wheels. Mark packed what he could in 1 minute. Water, food packs, solar torch, emergency flare. Karila didn't flinch as she ripped her chain from the ground post, but she kept it coiled around her wrist like a snake. Let's go, she said, voice cold. I'll take the lead. They ran into the canyon, their boots silent over dust and stone. The planet's wind howled like ghosts through narrow cliffs. Mark knew the tunnels from previous scouting. Dark, deep, and perfect for hiding. But Karila was tense. She sniffed the air often, her claws twitching with every gust. What are they? Mark asked as they hid under a ledge. Trackers, she said. Built to bring us back, not kill, unless ordered. And if they catch you? They'll chain me to a control post, she growled. Play noise into my skull. Remove thought. Keep body. Mark's stomach turned. You mean, like a remote weapon? Yes, she said. They take away everything except muscle. They waited until night, hidden beneath stone and silence. Mark lit a small heat lamp and passed her a ration bar. She didn't eat it, just stared into the shadows. Then she whispered, I was 10 when they gave me my first kill order. Mark's heart ached at those words. I didn't want to obey, she said. So they turned on the pain chip. I broke my own fingers to stop myself, but I still moved. She held up her hands, thick scars across every knuckle. Mark didn't speak, just sat beside her quietly. She finally ate the ration bar, slowly, like every bite was a memory. Suddenly a light flashed across the canyon wall. They both ducked, pressing their backs against the rock. One of the hunter drones hovered above the ridge, scanning. Its scanner beeped, then turned green, locked on a trace. Run, Mark said, pulling her hand. No, she hissed, eyes glowing bright now. They'll follow scent. We split. Are you crazy? I'm faster, she said. I'll draw them away. Mark hesitated, but she was already gone, leaping like a shadow through the stone paths. The drone followed, and so did the others, their silent wheels chasing her light steps. Mark waited. An hour, hiding behind a broken tree stump. The night was too quiet. He hated this, waiting, hiding, useless. Then he heard it. Screams, metal crashing, and something. Roaring, he ran toward the sound, heart pounding. The moment he reached the ridge, he saw her. Karila was covered in blood, none of it hers. 3 drones lay smashed across the rocks, wires spilling like guts. She was on her knees, breathing. Hard shaking, Mark rushed to her, grabbing her shoulders. Are you okay? I almost lost it, she said. They used the code again. They tried to shut me down, but I remembered your voice. Mark didn't know what to say. She looked up at him, tears mixing with dust. I'm not just muscle, she said. I'm not just a weapon. You're right, he whispered. You're not. But before they could rest, a new sound filled the air. He turned his scanner back on, and it screamed. Bigger signatures. 4, maybe 5, approaching fast from the south. Those weren't the real hunters, Karila said, her eyes wide. They were just scouts, Mark helped her to her feet. "This isn't over," he said. "No," she agreed, gripping her chain tight. "This is just beginning." They didn't stop running until morning. Mark's legs burned, lungs ached, but he kept going because Karila never slowed. Her feet barely touched the ground, leaping from rock to rock with silent strength. But when they finally reached the mouth of an old cave, she collapsed. Not from pain, but from restraint. Her hands trembled, chains still wrapped around her wrist, blood from drone wires staining her skin. Mark caught her just before she fell. "Sit," he said gently. "You're safe, at least for now." Karila nodded, eyes unfocused, her breath short and sharp. Mark started a small fire inside the cave, careful not to let the smoke rise too high. She sat close to it, staring into the flames with a faraway look. Her beast-like ears twitched, listening to echoes only she could hear. They didn't speak. For hours, Mark shared water and dry fruit, but she only accepted the water. Finally, as the wind blew past the cave entrance, Karila spoke. "I never thought I'd see the sun rise without orders in my head." Mark didn't reply. He let her talk. "I don't remember my real mother," she said. "Only the lab, the chains, the voice that told me what to kill." She ran her hand over the chain on her wrist. "This one's different. I put it on myself, but I feel freer than ever." Mark smiled a little, surprised by how deep her words were. "You don't need the chain," he said. "Not really." "Yes," she whispered, "but I need you more." Later that day, they found shelter deeper in the canyon, a broken-down rover pod half covered in vines. It looked abandoned for years, but the solar cells still worked, barely. Mark set up a heat lamp and tried to repair the transmitter. Karila helped quietly, holding wires, passing tools, watching his hands. When he accidentally shocked himself, he cursed and dropped the cable. She jumped, startled, then looked at him with wide eyes. And giggled. Mark blinked. Did you just laugh?" he asked. Karila looked away quickly, ears flattening. "I didn't mean to," she said softly. "It just happened." Mark chuckled too. "It's okay," he said. "You should laugh more often." "That was my first one," she whispered. "I didn't know it felt warm." That night, Mark cooked a small stew from wild roots and ration packs. Karila leaned in closer than usual, sniffing the pot. He handed her a bowl and waited. She took one bite, then stared at him. "This is amazing," she said. "It doesn't taste like fuel or paste." He grinned. "Yeah, well, you're not in a cage anymore." She was quiet after that, but not in the same way. Now her silence was peaceful, not haunted. She even leaned her shoulder lightly against his. Mark didn't move, didn't speak. He just let the moment stay. When the stars came out, Karela sat near the entrance of the pod, her eyes reflecting the sky. Mark joined her, wrapping an old blanket around them both. She didn't pull away. "Do you miss your home?" she asked. "I don't really have one anymore," he said. "Earth's far, and my ship's wrecked." She looked at him carefully. "Then maybe we make a new one." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You mean here?" She nodded. "A place, without labs, without orders. Just quiet nights and stupid stew," he added. She smiled, and this time, he saw her teeth but no danger behind them, just softness. Her first real smile. Suddenly, the quiet broke. The transmitter beeped, then blinked red. Mark rushed over, reading the alert. A hunter signal was nearby. Karela stood, eyes sharp again. "How many?" she asked. "Just one, maybe two," he said. "Signal's weak." "Scouts," she muttered. "Checking for survivors." Mark grabbed his knife and motioned for silence, but Karela placed a hand on his arm. "I'll handle it." Mark shook his head. "You're still healing." She looked him dead in the eye. "No," she said. "I'm awake now." She stepped out into the shadows, her body blending with the rocks. Mark waited by the pod door, hand gripping the edge of his blade. Minutes passed, long and tense. Then a body rolled down the ridge, A small scout drone, its signal light dead. Karila followed a moment later, wiping dust from her arms. "No one saw," she said. "We're safe." Mark exhaled slowly. "You didn't go wild," he said. She nodded, pride on her face. "I remembered your voice," she whispered. "I remembered your laugh." Mark smiled, realizing the truth. This wasn't just about survival anymore. Karila was changing, growing, healing, becoming more than a weapon, and somewhere along the way, he had become part of her reason why. The days passed quietly after Karila's first smile, but peace never lasted long on this planet. Mark had repaired the transmitter just enough to scan incoming frequencies, and now, one morning it picked up a signal, a coded one, bouncing. Across military channels, Karila heard it and froze. Her fingers tightened around her chain, her eyes glowing softly. "That's not just a hunter signal," she whispered. "That's the Alpha Protocol." Mark frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Karila stepped back like she'd been struck. "It means they activated the kill order." Mark stood up quickly, heart racing. "Kill order on who?" "On me," she said, her voice trembling. "If I can't be brought back, they erase me." Mark turned off the scanner, but it was too late. The signal had already reached her. She grabbed her head suddenly, dropping to her knees. A sharp whine filled the air, but only she could hear it. Her body jerked once. Then again, "No, no, no," she muttered, claws digging into the dirt. "Not again, not again." Mark rushed to her side, grabbing her shoulders. "Karila, fight it. Stay with me." She gritted her teeth, veins pulsing under her skin. "I don't want to hurt you," she said, barely holding on. "Then don't," Mark whispered. "Look at me. Listen to me." Her breathing slowed slightly, the glow in her eyes dimming. Mark held her hand tightly, never blinking, never letting go. Minutes passed like hours. But finally, her body relaxed. She collapsed against him, sweat pouring from her forehead. "They tried to turn me off," she said weakly. "But you pulled me back." Mark held her close, whispering, "I've got you." And he did, even when everything else wanted to take her away. Later, as she rested in the shade, Mark sat beside her. "You need to explain this," he said. "What's this Alpha Protocol?" Karila closed her eyes, voice heavy. "It's the final command," she said, "the last resort if a subject escapes. But it's more than just control. It's an override of the soul." Mark's chest tightened. "They take over your body?" "Yes," she said softly, "and destroy what's left inside." She told him everything then, how she wasn't just part of a beast project, but one of the first hybrids created to bond with a single mind. One mind to anchor the chaos, one bond that gave her purpose. She was meant to follow that mind into battle, never question, never resist. But her bondmate had died during a failed mission, and she had been left, unclaimed, unchained, and unstable. Until she found Mark. "I didn't choose you with logic," she said. "It was instinct, but also something deeper. You didn't look at me like a thing. You spoke to me like I mattered." Mark couldn't look away. "And that stopped the beast?" Karila smiled faintly. "No," she whispered. "You did." Just then, the transmitter crackled again. But this time, it wasn't a hunter drone. It was a voice, mechanical, cold, and filled with command. "Subject Alpha 7, report location." Karila growled low but didn't move. Mark stepped forward, clicked on the mic, and spoke clearly. "She's not reporting," he said. "She's free now." A long pause followed. Then the voice responded. "Unauthorized voice detected. Prepare for retrieval by force." Karila stood, her expression full of fire. "Let them come," she said. "I'm not going back." That night they set traps around the valley, tripwires, smoke bombs, and broken drone parts made into decoys. Mark watched her move, fast, silent, and without fear. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was defending her new life. In the early hours of dawn, a soft humming filled the air. The sky shimmered with faint blue trails. Drop pods incoming. Mark grabbed his gear, checking Karila's eyes. "You sure you're ready?" She nodded, gripping her claws tight. I won't be their weapon again. The first pod landed near the ridge. Two sleek figures in black armor stepped out, rifles raised, scanners sweeping. Mark aimed his flare toward the canyon wall and fired. The explosion echoed. Rocks tumbling down and cutting off their path, Karila leapt from above, slamming one soldier to the ground. The other tried using a command device, but she ripped it from his hand and crushed it. I have my own mind now, she hissed. They ran, leaving the stunned hunters behind. Mark followed, adrenaline racing through him. But when he looked at her, he saw something incredible. Not just strength, not rage. He saw pride. Later, they returned to the rover pod. Bruised but alive, Karila sat beside the fire, staring at her old chain. Then, slowly, she tossed it into the flames. Mark turned to her, confused. I thought you needed it. She smiled, real, full of light this time. Not anymore, she said. I have you. The days after the Alpha Protocol attack were strangely quiet. No more signals, no more drones, no voices calling through the transmitter. Mark kept expecting something to come crashing through the trees or the sky. But nothing did. Karila had broken the last command, and now she was free. She spent most of her time near the old rover pod, sometimes sharpening a spear, sometimes just sitting still. Mark noticed something different about her. She no longer slept with a blade in her hand. She didn't flinch when birds flew overhead. And when he spoke, she looked at him, not just with attention but with warmth. One morning, Mark found her sitting by a small pool of water. She was staring at her reflection, ears twitching. He walked over slowly and sat beside. Are you okay? She nodded, but her eyes were distant. I don't recognize this face, she whispered. I know the eyes, but not the calm. Mark smiled gently. That's not a bad thing. She glanced at him, then back at the water. I was always a weapon, she said. A tool, a beast, something dangerous. But now, I feel different. Mark looked up at the sky, thinking, maybe that's because you're becoming someone now. Karila tilted her head, confused. Someone? Yes, he said. Not a thing, not a tool, not a project, just a person with her own choices. That night she asked him for something surprising. Teach me to cook. Mark blinked, then laughed. You want to cook? She nodded seriously. You made food taste alive. I want to know how. So they gathered wild roots, edible leaves, and some dry food packs. Karila sat beside the fire, listening closely. She held the knife awkwardly at first, slicing too hard, then too soft. Mark helped guide. Her hand adjusting her grip, she was patient even when she messed up. When the stew finally boiled, she leaned in, inhaling the scent deeply. It smells like peace, she said quietly. And when she took the first bite, her eyes widened. This is mine? All yours? Mark smiled. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. No chains, no orders, no blood, just food made by her own hands. It was her first taste of humanity, and it showed in the way she smiled afterward. Later, she began asking small questions. What does laughter mean? Why do humans hold hands? Why do you smile when I call your name? Mark answered every question as best he could, and when he couldn't find the words, he just sat with her in silence. And somehow, that was enough. One evening, she came to him with something behind her back. When she revealed it, Mark was shocked. A necklace made from smooth stones and wire from the broken drone parts. For you, she said shyly. I wanted to give something back. Mark took it carefully, touched by the effort. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she replied. You gave me my mind, my voice, my soul. He wore it around his neck from that moment on, and never took it off. As time passed, Karila began humming to herself while she worked. She danced a little when no one was looking. She even painted strange shapes on the cave walls using berry juice. Mark walked in one day to find a drawing of two figures, one large with sharp ears, the other small with a backpack and a smile. Underneath, she had written one word in shaky English, together. But peace couldn't last forever. One day, a beacon lit up in the sky, flashing red and white. Mark stared at it through his binoculars, heart sinking. "It's a rescue beacon," he said. "A real human ship might be close enough to answer." Karila stood beside him, arms crossed. "Will they take you away?" "Maybe," he said softly. "It depends who finds it." "And if they come?" she asked. "What will you tell them?" Mark looked at her, truly looked. At the girl who once chained herself to his tent. At the beast who cried over stew and smiled at her own cooking. At the alien who had become his closest friend. "I'll tell them. You're the reason I'm still alive," he said. "And I'm not leaving without you." Karila's eyes shimmered. She stepped closer, touched his hand lightly. "I was afraid of losing control," she said. "But now I'm afraid of losing you." Mark didn't speak, just wrapped his fingers around hers. The human and the Beastwoman not bound by chains anymore, but by something stronger, by choice. The beacon pulsed high above the valley, its red and white lights flashing like a signal fire to the stars. Mark watched it flicker from the edge of the cave. He could hear Karila breathing quietly behind him. Neither of them spoke. They both knew what this meant. Someone would come. The only question was, who? Karila stepped forward and stood beside him. She stared at the sky like it was about to swallow everything. "Are you ready?" she asked. Mark shrugged. "I don't think anyone's ever really ready." She nodded slowly. "I'm not afraid of death anymore," she said. "But I'm still afraid of cages." They packed their supplies, not because they were fleeing, but because they wanted the option to leave together. Karila folded the old blanket, the one they used by the fire. She ran her fingers across the necklace she made for Mark, now resting around his neck. Then she picked up the last piece of her old chain, one link she had saved from the fire. She stared at it for a moment, then dropped it gently into the river near the pod. The current carried it away without sound, and with it, something heavy left her eyes too. Later that day, a sound echoed across the valley. A ship. It was small, marked with the faded blue crest of the Colonial Rescue Corps. It landed carefully near the ridge, kicking up dust. Mark raised a flare, and the ship responded with a blinking light. He looked at Karila. "This could be our ride," he said. "Or our trouble," she added. Two humans stepped out. One, older with a scanning tablet, and one younger in medic gear. They approached carefully, eyes scanning both of them. Mark waved, hands open. "We activated the old pod's beacon," he explained. "Crash survivor, and she's with me." The medic's eyes went wide when he saw Karila. "That's a hybrid," he whispered, reaching for his stun stick. But Mark stepped in front of her. "She's not what you think," he said, voice calm but firm. "She's not a danger, she's a person, and she's with me." Karila stood tall, shoulders back, but not tense. "I don't want to fight," she said, her voice steady, "but I will not be taken." The older man narrowed his eyes, then checked the scanner. "No active threat signal," he muttered. "Her override code is dead." Mark nodded. "She killed it herself." "Impossible," the man said. "She chose it," Mark replied, "and she chose to stay human." There was silence, thick and heavy. Then the medic lowered his weapon. "What now?" he asked quietly. Mark looked at Karila. "I go with her," he said. "Wherever she goes." The older man raised an eyebrow. "She's not listed on any rescue manifest." "She's not cargo," Mark said. "She's Karila, and she's free." The two rescue officers looked at each other. Finally, the older one sighed. "Fine," he said. "But she rides with you, not in holding." Mark smiled. "Good," he said. "She doesn't belong behind bars anymore." They loaded onto the ship just as the sun began to set. Karila sat beside Mark, staring out the window. She touched the seat's soft fabric like it was magic. "I've never flown free before," she said. "Only in chains, always asleep." Mark reached over and gently took her hand. "You're not going back to sleep," he said. "Not ever. Again." As the ship rose into the clouds, Karila leaned her head against his shoulder. Her claws relaxed, her breathing calm. She whispered one word, so soft he almost didn't hear it. Home. 3 weeks later, on a quiet moon colony, Karila planted a small garden. She laughed when it rained, danced when it thundered. She learned to smile without fear, and Mark never left her side. People stared, some whispered, but no one dared touch her without her permission. She was no longer the beast chained outside a stranger's tent. She was Karila, strong, kind, scarred, but whole. One evening, while watching the stars, she turned to Mark. "Would you have saved me if I had been someone else?" Mark smiled. "You weren't someone else," he said. "You were always you." And that was enough. She took his hand and placed it over her heart. "I still feel the old commands," she said. "The beast never left." Mark nodded. "Good," he whispered, "because that means you chose to be better." They sat together in the quiet night. No chains, no commands, only two souls, one human, one beast-born, but both finally free. And from that moment on, neither of them ever walked alone again.